Hey there, Jeremy. How you doing, bud? All right, everybody. Welcome to Shop Talk Tuesday Live. And I want to remind you guys that we go live every Tuesday evening at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I want to thank everybody for coming to hang out with us tonight. So I got a few things that I want to talk about. First things first, the Cheapskate Challenge. I've had a few people message me and show me some pictures of some things that they're making. And I wanted to encourage everybody for the Cheapskate Challenge to send me some pictures. Let me know the progress and post them up on social media with the hashtag Cheapskate Challenge. So Nathan, if you're watching, thanks for coming up with that name, Cheapskate Challenge. Hey, the chicken guy, how's it going, man? The dog, I think she just ran off into the other side of the room. How you doing, Tailgate Down? Hey there, Renee Porter from Atlantic City. How's the weather there? Hey, Jeremy, what's the weather like where you are? Sabersaw5611 says, for any epoxy you use, do you always have to heat the surface to pop the bubbles? I heard epoxy you don't have to, but I'm skeptical. That's a great question. So epoxy, you're right. They advertise that you don't have to do anything to the surface with a heat gun or torch or whatever. However, I've seen some people use it that still use a heat gun to pop all the bubbles. Chris, hey from Puerto Rico. How you doing, buddy? The chicken guy, that's hilarious. Yeah, she always runs away, I know. She doesn't want to listen because Mama's in the kitchen making some stuff or cleaning up and she thinks she's going to get a little scraps here and there. Guys, so the Cheapskate Challenge is coming up. Remember, it ends April 19th. So be sure to have your entries in by that time. And all you have to do is send me pictures or video of your subscription to Instagram or Facebook at GoodView Woodworks. Maurice, you the best. Thanks, man. Well, let's hurry up and get into the whole topic of conversation. If you saw the thumbnail, I had these three tools and I said, which one? And the reason is because on a few of I've had a lot of comments recently about using epoxy and which tools to use. Jeremy asked for cutting burl or your epoxy with a saw. What number blade teeth is the best? That's a good question. Now, I don't know the specific number, but the one that I use is a thin kerf, and it is for, and I think it has, if I remember correctly, it was for finish cutting. So if you see that on the description, those are the ones that I use. The chicken guy, yes it is. Yes, as a matter of fact, if you go to Stone Coat Countertop's website, they have all kinds of metal flake and pearls for you to choose from. And as a matter of fact, they have a material list. If you wanted to achieve Black Galaxy, they have all the stuff there to that you can order and get that perfect look. I think they call it a recipe. So check out stonecoatcountertops.com and they will have that over there. Renee Porter, any updated pics of the buffet server? Nope. But it will be done this weekend. I finally got it completely sanded, all the doors made, everything is built. I'm just working on filling some small areas from the finish nailer, and it's ready for stain, as a matter of fact. So I would have had it stained last weekend. However, it was raining and disgusting outside, and the stain wouldn't dry. So we had to wait till some less humid weather came in. Hey, Jeremy, you're right. Stonecoat can't be one of our shop choices for the contest. So I did notice. So I went to Home Depot and I found this spray paint that was just silver glitter, and I'm gonna try to use some of that and see what I can come up with. So I've never used it before, but I think I can get a similar look like that. Chris H says, new subscriber, love the channel and all you do. Nothing better than a good old boy talk. That's right, man. I appreciate that, Curtis. Thanks for subscribing and thanks for checking in with us tonight. So I wanted to hit you guys up and let you know of some of the comments that I got. And a lot of people have asked, should they use a shower squeegee or a notch trowel or a roller to apply the finish coat of epoxy, whether you're doing countertops or woodworking or whatever? And I wanted to kind of settle this for you guys from my opinion and my personal experience. And Andy, what's going up, man? So somebody asked me about when you asking about the shower squeegee. So for example, when you are sealing wood, so before you have any epoxy and you're using something with a wood substrate, whether it's like a live edge slab or lumber or whatever it is, you want to seal it because wood is porous, and when the epoxy cures, it causes an exothermic reaction. Essentially, what that means is some heat is generated, and what will happen is if the wood is not sealed, it will cause air bubbles to escape, and you'll get air bubbles in your finished product. And we don't want that. We want it to look nice. We don't want bubbles in it. So the shower squeegee is used to put on thin coats of epoxy on top of your wood project. And the rule of thumb is 1 ounce per square foot of space. That way you're not over mixing epoxy and using too much. Then we come to the square notch trowel. And the square notch trowel is also a necessity, but this is for your flood coat. This is for your final coat when working with woodworking projects. Also, if you want to do a countertop, you would be using this to apply the correct amount for your flood coat. And I got this at Ace Hardware, and it's just a square notch trowel, but it's plastic and it has several different sizes available, but it has 2 1/8 inch sizes. So it has 1/8 inch by 1/4 inch and has 1/8 inch by 3 millimeter. Really, you can use either side. The goal is to get an 1/8 inch. The amount of epoxy needs to be an 1/8 inch thick on your flood coat, and this ensures that you get that correct amount of epoxy. So both of these tools are necessary when you're doing a live edge slab or any kind of wood that you're using with epoxy. Hey Jeremy, I appreciate that, man. Somebody asked here, what epoxy do I use? So I've used several types of epoxy, but my favorite epoxy would have to be Stonecoat Countertops epoxy. It has a really long working time, and the bubbles actually, when you heat it up, they come out and they stay out, which is really nice. Curtis says, do you always keep the epoxy below the wood level so that you can cut to the thickness to reduce costs? Let me see if I can figure out that question. Do you always keep the epoxy below the wood level so that you can cut to thickness to reduce? Oh, I see what you mean. So, no, see, what I would do is just get it to the top, because generally speaking, when I go to plane a piece of wood, I want to get it flat before I'm pouring any epoxy, because once it's flat, you know how much you're going to be able to use. So what I'll do is I'll plane it first, pour the amount of epoxy that I need, and that way, at the end, I'll have minimal sand or whatever. Hopefully that helps, Curtis. Excuse me. I need a little LaCroix break. What'd you say, honey? LA Croix in the house. One last thing I wanted to get to is a roller. Now, I have tried using a roller, applying epoxy, but the problem that I have with using a roller is that when you're rolling the roller, it either wants to slide and push a big glob of epoxy one direction on your work surface, or when it rolls, it wants to grab and pick up epoxy and move it around. So if you have some spots that are thin, it'll pick it up and move it somewhere else where it's thicker, and it kind of defeats the purpose. I know there are a couple of companies that use rollers, and they have more experience using a roller. Now, I'm not going to say that you can't use a roller, but with my experience, it didn't allow me or ensure me to have the same thickness throughout the entire pour, whether it was across a piece of lumber or whatever. I didn't have the same thickness all the way across. So, as a matter of fact, I want to tell you guys a story about a company. I won't list the company's name or tell you the name, but they have a YouTube channel, and I commented on one of their videos. William Wackman says, one last thing, I thought we were just getting warmed up. I think I meant one last thing about the topic that I was talking about at the moment. Hey, William says, ink rollers work much better. Use self-leveling epoxy. See, so most of the epoxy I use is self-leveling, but I have never used an ink roller. That's a great tip. The chicken guy asked, why some people pour epoxy layer by layer and some go all in, and which method is best for what? Okay, the chicken guy, that's a great question. So when you notice that people are pouring a lot of epoxy at one time, like a lot of thickness, like an inch or 2 inches, what they're doing is they're using casting resin or casting epoxy. It's epoxy made specifically for thicker pours. And when you see people who are pouring thin layers at a time, they're using some sort of coating resin, whether it's a countertop resin or a boat resin. It's not made to go very thick, it's made to go thin. It usually dries or cures a lot quicker, and so it gets hotter. And the problem is, if you were to pour it really thick and it's not a casting resin, what will happen will be a mixture of things. Either it'll steam, you'll get a lot of bubbles and stuff in it, or it can crack. And that's not what we want to do. Hey, there you go, William. He says, it cracks, chicken. Hey, Will, thanks for the ink roller tip. That's great. I'm going to have to try that. That sounds pretty awesome. Jeremy asked, what does stabilizing the wood prior to epoxy mean? So I've seen people stabilize wood, and that's a whole different process. But essentially, when you're working with a wood substrate to stabilize, you're just filling all the empty pores with epoxy, with a thin layer of epoxy, so that way when you do a thicker pour on top and it gets hot, air can't escape from the wood or moisture can't escape from the wood and cause bubbles in your finished product. The Ching guy says, so the best in any case, if you have time, is casting epoxy. That's a good question as well. They both have their uses. So for a casting epoxy, yes, if you're going to do anything if you're casting anything or pouring any thick pours, that's what you want to use. But most of the time, casting epoxy doesn't have the scratch resistance or the UV inhibitors in it to protect it from everyday use, like people touching it or bumping it or sitting things down on it. So what you want to, so each epoxy has its place. What you want to do is if you're going to cast something, you want to use casting epoxy first to get your thickness, and then if you wanted to use it as a bar top or something that's going to get a lot of abuse, you would use a countertop epoxy over that. Hopefully that makes sense, chicken. Tailgate Down makes a good point. Says you want to make sure it's level too. And yes, been there, done that, got the t-shirt and the ticket stubs. As a matter of fact, on one of the coffee tables I was doing, I wasn't exactly level. So it looked level. The next day when it cured, it was down an 1/8 inch on one side and over the wood on the other side. And I had to plane it down and do another coat. Hey, chicken. Yeah, now you can sleep in peace. That's hilarious. William has another great tip. He says if you're going to do multiple layers, wait until it's a bit tacky so the heat doesn't crack it. That's a great point. And also, if you wait till it's tacky and not fully cured, when you pour the next layer, you don't need to sand in between layers, so it saves a step. The hard part is if you have a full-time job like me, you can't always get back to it before it cures. Tailgate Down says it's good to sand your prime coat too. Yes. Anytime that you are pouring epoxy onto a substrate that's cured or hard, whether it's wood or epoxy or whatever, you always want to sand in between because those little micro scratches give it a really good mechanical adhesion. No, the tickle in the throat is coming from seasonal allergies. Here in the past couple of days, it's gone from freezing to 70 degrees and then back to freezing. Virginia weather is terrible. Tailgate Down, he says, and solvent wipe. That's a good idea as well. What I like to do is I will use 91% isopropyl alcohol, rubbing alcohol. It it works really well. It evaporates really quickly and it doesn't leave any oily residue. I know if you were to try to use like mineral spirits, I've seen somebody try to use mineral spirits before. Mineral spirits is a bad thing to use because one, it could break down the epoxy depending on which epoxy you use. And it can also leave an oily residue that would demote adhesion. Tanda asks, is a torch better than a heat gun? That's another really good question. So in my experience, they both have their places. However, I don't feel that you need a torch, but you do need a heat gun. And this is why. A torch, so the benefit of a torch is that a torch, you can get the bubbles that are deep. If you have a deeper layer, it's hotter and the bubbles will pop easier with a torch. However, if you hold a torch in one place too long, you can burn the epoxy. Whereas a heat gun can't get hot enough to burn the epoxy, and you can use a heat gun to pop the bubbles. You can also use it to move the epoxy around and to get different characteristics of the epoxy by moving around. So if you had like a metallic powder or a metallic pigment in the epoxy, you can move it around with the heat gun a lot easier than you can a torch. You can still do the same things with a torch. You have to be careful though for leaving it in one spot for too long. Hey Nathan, what's up, man? It's okay. Remember, Nathan says he forgot, and what he means is that we every Tuesday night at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we go live here on the GoodView Woodworks channel, and we call it Shop Talk Tuesday. And really what that is, it's a behind the scenes here at GoodView Woodworks, and we go over things that you guys want to talk about, whether it's tools, whether it's help with an epoxy project, anything that you guys want to talk about. That's what Shop Talk Tuesday is all about. William says never use MEK. It's a solvent, yes, but it's designed to remove resins. Good tip, man. I have methyl ethyl ketones. That's what it stands for. I haven't actually used that on any epoxy surfaces. We had one place I worked for a sign company. We had some methyl ethyl ketone to clean up screen printing stuff. And Nathan says hairspray works as well. I'm guessing you mean to pop bubbles. I'm guessing that's what you're saying. Is that what you're saying, Nathan? He says yes. Okay, so that's a pretty cool. I kind of want to just try it to see what it's like. What if I use the hairspray and a torch? Does that work as well? So SaberSaw5611 says, "What's the brand of the isopropyl you use? It's for cleaning between sanding, you said, right?" Yes. I don't know. Great Value, I think it's from Walmart. I think Great Value is the brand. I'm not sure. Any brand works. I just get the cheapest stuff available. Um, Chris, Chris Chat. Someone asked me at this weekend if it was possible to use epoxy on PVC wood, and if so, how would I go about the task? That's a good question. Um, I would say yes, you could use epoxy. Now, I've never done it before, but uh, a lot of the PVC and a lot of PVC has this mold release that is kind of still left on the outside of it from when they take the PVC out of the mold when they make it. So what you would have to do is use a torch or a heat gun to kind of bring that mold release to the surface, and then use an isopropyl alcohol or some sort of solvent to wipe that mold release off. Then you would need to sand and sand it so that you have good mechanical adhesion. I would say sand with like 100 grit or 150, something like that. Sabersaw says percentage of alcohol question mark. It's 91%. William Wackman says stone mold release just to be safe. Hurts like hell flying off a lathe. So tell me what happened. What happened? What were you turning on the lathe? What is stone mold release? No problem, Sabersaw. Chris, same thing. No problem, man. You guys can ask as many or as little questions as you would like. So guys, I wanted to let you know as well, in the comments down in the bottom of this video, I have linked the adoption website if you guys wanted to donate some money to our adoption fund. If you're new to this channel, my wife and I are in the process of adoption, and as you guys may or may not know, it's very expensive. And so we have a fundraiser that I link down in the description, as well as we also have some merch. Got some t-shirts and a hoodie that are also linked down in the description. So when you guys get a chance, feel free to look at it and let me know what you think. Took a 6-inch bowl of resin that was stuck in the PVC, so I had to cut it off. Oh, oh man. Oh, it hit. He said blammo right in the kiss. Did it hit you in the mouth? Did it hit you in the face? And 2 questions: were you wearing safety glasses or a shield of any sort? The chicken guy asked, is it okay to pour epoxy directly on an LED light? Like to have the light directly in the epoxy? Yes. If you can put you can put LEDs inside of epoxy. There are several people that I know on YouTube that have done something very similar. William says, we redneck down here. Hey, I know what you mean, bro. Well, guys, I want to thank you guys for coming and watching and hanging out. And watching tonight in this Shop Talk Tuesday live. I want to encourage you guys to come out every week, every Tuesday at 7:15. But I wanted to give you guys a couple things that are coming up in the this week on GoodView Woodworks. And so I know I've been mentioning a lot that we have this river table for this boat, this yacht coming up, and I will have stuff for that on Friday. So if everything happens the way I would like it to, part 1 of making the mold for a huge river table will be posted up this weekend. So guys, look out for that. It's going to be really cool. I think the total amount of epoxy that I'll be pouring at one time is somewhere, I think it's around 11 gallons, which is a lot. Sabersaw says, congratulations on going through with the adoption. Wish you the best. Hey man, thank you. I really appreciate that. And we are really excited and looking forward to being parents one day. Hey, Renee Porter, thank you so much. The Ching guy says, see you next week. Guys, I want to thank you for coming out. Please do me a favor, if you haven't subscribed, I don't know if you have or not. I would assume that you did because you're watching me live, but hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share this video, and I will see you next week. You guys have a good day. Have a good evening. And Nathan, I putting some bad words up there. You guys have a good evening. Talk to you later.